Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I thought we would make this cute little triple spinner card using some products from Fawn. So let's go ahead and get started. So to get started, I'm using the large Slimline with sliders die set from Fawn, and I'm going to grab that largest one. For paper, I'm using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. I'll run that through the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And you'll see here it's a little bit long for the Spellbinders Platinum machine, so I'm just going to run that through, slide it up just a little bit, and run that bottom section through one more time. So now I've got these beautiful stencils. These are the Falling Leaves background stencils from Fawn. And you do want to make sure that they're face up, and you can see that it says lawnfawn.com down at the bottom. So I do want to use that as the direction that I'm going to place these stencils in. So I'm going to keep that wording at the bottom, along the bottom edge on both of these. And again, that'll just help me to be sure that I line these up properly. And then what I'm going to do here is, first I'll tape down my paper with just a little bit of Tombow tape, and that'll come right off when we're done. That'll just hold that in place for me. And then I'll place the stencil a 1/4 inch below the cardstock and a 1/4 inch to the right of the cardstock. And you do want to remember that because you want to make sure you place the second stencil in the exact same positioning. So I'll tape that down with some purple tape, and then I'll put some purple tape along the top edge of this stencil as well, because we have to finish the top section a little bit later on, and I don't want to get any ink on there yet. So now that I've got that all taped off, I'll grab all my little sponge daubers here. And then for inks, I'm starting with Fossilized Amber, Rustic Wilderness, Twisted Citron, and Mowed Lawn. So I'm going to do some yellows and greens here to start off. And really all you want to do here is just kind of mix up your colors. So I'm kind of patting on that lightest color first. Then I'll come in with some darker shades. So I'll go to the Mowed Lawn. Again, just sort of patting on color at this point. A little bit of that Rustic Wilderness. And then I'll go back to my lighter foam applicator and just kind of spread that out a little bit. Just blending those together. Adding a little bit more of a highlight there with the Fossilized Amber. And then you see me blotting on the paper towel. I'm just taking off any excess ink there. Now I'm going to Crackling Campfire, Carved Pumpkin, Aged Mahogany, and a little bit of that Fossilized Amber. And all of these colors will be listed down below and on my blog as well as all the products I've used today. So again, I'm just patting on some yellows, oranges, and just adding a touch of that aged mahogany on there is just going to make this into a beautiful leaf. And again, I'm not going to use the same colors on every leaf. I'll just mix and match. Here I'm just going to use a little yellow and some orange, and then I'll just blend that out a little bit. So really just have fun with this. And remember to use any colors you want here. It doesn't have to be these fall colors. I'm using the fall colors today because I wanted to do the acorns, and I just thought it would make a beautiful Thanksgiving type card or thankful type card. But certainly your leaves could be in pinks and purples and blues, any color you want here. Just have fun with it. Just play around with these colors and have fun. I did find this process to be very relaxing. So again, I'm just patting on those colors and then blending them out. And when you're done and you're ready to clean up, you can always pat that onto a baby wipe or a damp paper towel just to clean that off, and then you can let those dry. But I don't worry too much about mixing the inks. I mean, that's the fun of it. That's what our tools are meant to be for. But if it does bother you, again, you can clean those off afterwards. You can just blot those off and get those little foam applicators clean. And then there is one little acorn here that I'm going to color in. And I'm using the Brush Corduroy and the Vintage Photo. I'll start with that lighter color and just tap on a little bit of the darker color there. So I'm just finishing up here with anything that I didn't that I didn't apply ink to. Now I can remove my purple tape, and you can see that we start to build the layers of this. So now again, I'm going to make sure I line that stencil up the same way I lined up the first one. I want that wording to be at the very bottom facing up. I'm leaving a 1/4 inch on the right and on the bottom. So then my second stencil will line up perfectly. And then I'll just go ahead and do the same thing here, same process with just applying all my different inks and colors here, just mixing and matching these and blending those out. And I just think this stencil is so pretty. You could use this for so many different things. Again, just by changing out the colors. And you could just use a portion of this stencil if you wanted to. If you just want an individual leaf, or to just mask off the section of the stencil that you don't want to ink up. And you could just ink 1 or 2 of these leaves and do a beautiful card that way as well. So if you feel like this is a little too time consuming and you don't want to do the entire stencil, just do a little portion of it. Now, once I'm done with this section, we will need to do that top section. So that's why I have that masked off. I just want to make sure that I didn't get any ink up on that top section. So this is a slimline card. So the final card will measure 3.5 by 8.5. So we do need to do that top section, and I'll show you how I line up that stencil here in a second. So again, just finishing up a few little parts here that I didn't do. Now once that's all set, I can go ahead and remove the purple tape. And then what we'll need to do is line up the stencils again up towards the top here so we can finish off this top section. So I'll play around with that a little bit just to see where those line up so that I get the best coverage here. I don't want a gap between the two stencils. So the key here is just to make sure you remember the grid lines that you want to use here, just to make sure that you line up the second stencil the exact same way. So I'm just looking through that stencil to make sure that I line it up so that there's no gap here. I'm taping that down with some purple tape, and you can see that I've gone a 1/4 inch off the side on the left and about a 1/4 inch down from the top of the stenciling that we had done previously. So I went ahead off camera and did the stenciling of layer 1 of the stencil here. I really just wanted to show you how I line this up so that the stenciling was the exact same as we did before. So I'm using that same grid line. I want to make sure that my wording is facing up and at the bottom of my stencil. And then I'm just lining this up. And now I can see through the stencil there. So I'm using those 3 leaves there to do my lining up. But you could certainly use the grid lines as well. So again, I'll place the tape down here just to make sure that it doesn't go over the top. And then again, I did my stenciling off camera. Just mixing and matching all those colors again. And now you can see that we have a beautiful transition here, that you can't see any gap there in that panel. So now with my vintage photo, I'm just going to create a little bit of an edge all the way around this. So I'm using my life-changing brush, and I'm using one of the smaller ones because I don't want to come in too far. So I'm just going to apply that nice little border all the way around. Now let's create the circle openings in this panel. So I'm going to grab my outside in stitched circle stackable dies. I'm grabbing that 3rd largest one. I'm going to center this on this panel. So again, this panel measures 3.5 by 8.5. So I'm coming into the 4 1/4 mark here. And then I'll just center that on this panel. So again, you want to take a little time to make sure you get this first one centered on the panel. And then we will be die cutting 2 more circles. Now, if you want, you can create a template to do these circles first and then go to your cardstock if you're not sure. So that's always a possibility. Just create a nice little template, and then if you're making additional cards, it's nice to have the template as well. So you can see that we have that little circle that pops out. Now I can go ahead and I'll line up the next circle here. Again, just using the grid lines on my little mat here. And I'm placing it on my silicone mat just so it doesn't slide around too much while I'm trying to get this centered. And then I'll tape that down again with some purple tape and run that through the die cutting machine. Now we just have one more circle to do, so I'll use that same process. Now these 3 little circles that I punched out, I just thought they were really pretty. So you could create a second card with that, but I'm going to be using those on my envelopes. So now I've got a panel that measures 8.5 by 7 inches, and I'm scoring that at 3.5 inches. And again, that'll give us our standard slimline card, which measures 3.5 by 8.5. So that panel will fit right on top. So let's set that aside for now and go to our image. This is the Lawn Fawn Big Acorn, and there is a coordinating die available. We're going to place this on an acrylic block, and I'm just prepping it a little bit. I haven't used it yet, so I'm just rubbing that with my finger a little bit. And this is the VersaFine Clair ink pad. This is Pine Cone is the color, and it's this beautiful chocolate brown. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp 6 of these. We'll need 2 for each of the windows on our card. And this is a permanent ink, so I'll heat set that quickly before I do my coloring. And I'm using beige and mid brown to color this in, and I'll also use my blender pen. Now these are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens, so these are a water-based marker, and I'm using that blender pen to do my blending. I'm putting the color right along the edges here, and I'm pulling in towards the center. I'll use that darker brown up towards the top, just placing it along each of those grid lines, and then just gently pulling in towards the centers here, just to leave a nice highlight in there. We'll also be using a white gel pen later on, so if your highlighting isn't perfect, don't worry about it. We'll take care of that with the gel pen. Now I'm adding a little bit of that darker brown towards the sides. I just didn't think it had quite enough of a shadow here, so I'm just going to blend that in as well. And I did that for all of the little acorns. And now I'm going to grab the coordinating die. I'll tape that down with some purple tape, and I'll run these through my Sizzix Sidekick machine. And you can see how cute these are. So I did that for all 6 of these. Now here I've got that white gel pen that I spoke about earlier. So I'm going to add a little highlight on each of these little acorns, and then on those little tops as well. So here's a good way just to add that highlight if it didn't come out perfectly in your coloring. So this panel is going to sit on the front of our card. So I've opened up the card here. I'll tape that panel down with some purple tape, because we don't want to tape it down permanently yet, because we still have to put our little spinner mechanism in there. So I'm taping down that circle die right in the center there, and it sort of locks into place. So once you place that die in there, it just kind of locks into place, and then you can run it through the die cutting machine a couple of times, and then I'll place it back into the next circle, and again it just kind of locks right down in there, and I'll run that one through. And you do want to run it back and forth a couple of times, especially since we're using a 100-pound cardstock. So you want to make sure you cut all the way through. And just note that I'm using my large Spellbinders Platinum machine, because when you open up the card, you need it to fit. So you need the larger machine, not the Platinum 6, but the full-size machine. So now you can see I have that panel. It lines up exactly with the circles on the front panel. I'll remove the purple tape, and that's how our card is going to be positioned here. So now I'm going to flip that front panel over so that we can create the spinner mechanism. And I'll be using some clear thread, which I hope you can see there. And I'm using some score tape. This is the 1/4 inch score tape. And I'll place it at the top and the bottom of each of these little circles. Just a little strip of it here. That's so I can run that clear thread right down the center here. Now I'm also going to place the tape all around the rest of the card here. Just making sure I have plenty of it. I want this to not move around too much. Now I'm pressing that backing on the tape down with my bone folder, that just makes it much easier to lift off the backing on the tape. So I've removed those sections above and below each of those circles. And now we can go ahead and place our clear thread right down the center there. So I'm lining it up on my grid, and I want to be able to show you that, but it's really hard to see. So I've put it behind some black cardstock there. And I just got that thread at my local craft store. So now I'm going to, again, just make sure I line this up right down the center of these circles, right from the top to the bottom. And I know this is hard to see. And then I'm just cutting off that excess thread there. Now, once I do that, I'm going to take another piece of that score tape and place it right over the top of that thread, again at the top and the bottom of each of those circles. I just want to make sure that this thread stays in place when the spinner mechanism is being used. So now that I have that all set, I can go ahead and attach my little acorns here. So I want those to be centered on that thread. Again, I'm using the score tape. You want something very strong here. You can certainly use a glue here as well. I just thought the tape would be nice and secure. And then I want plenty of it on there, so I'm going to just cut away the excess just to make sure I have it edge to edge. Now I can remove the backing on that tape, and then I'll go ahead and center this on that clear thread there. So I'm placing it right in the center of that thread. And then I could go ahead and attach the second one right to the back. Now these acorns aren't perfectly symmetrical, but they're very close. So you see it's not quite perfect, but I think it's fine. So, but you do want to look for images that are fairly symmetrical here, so that when you line them up back to back, they are pretty close to being the same. So here again, I'm just adding that score tape, removing the backing, and again, I'm going to center it on that clear thread. And then I'll flip that over and put the second one on. Again, I'll do the same thing for this last one. And now we have our 3 little spinners, and they'll be the same on the front and on the inside of the card. So that's how our card will come together. Now let's do the inside. I've got the small slimline with lift the flaps dies, and I'm taking that rectangle and I'm going to tape that down onto some 100-pound cardstock. Again, I'm going back to the vintage photo and my little life-changing brush, and I'll go all around the edges of this just to create a little shadow all the way around the edges. So once that's done, I'll attach this to the inside of the card. I'm using my Lawn Fawn glue tube, and I'll just place some glue all the way around the back here, and I'll center it on this inside panel. Now I'm going to use my We Are Memory Keepers bone folder just to press that into place. So the next thing we'll want to do is add some sentiments, and we want to make sure they're behind those panels there. So I'm using my Jump for Joy and my Forest Feast sets to grab a few of the sentiments. So again, I'm going back to that VersaFine Claire Pine Cone ink pad. I've lined up the first stamp, which will say So Thankful. And again, I want to make sure that it's behind, between those 2 circles on the front panel so that it doesn't show through the front of the card. So I've already checked for that. Now I've got the next sentiment, which I'm cutting in half, and that says, For each moment with you. So thankful for each moment with you, and then we'll add an exclamation point here at the end. So I'm going to go ahead, and again, I'm just checking to make sure it's behind that, between those 2 circles on the front panel. I don't want it to show through the front of the card. I'm going to go ahead and ink that up, and then I'll stamp that as well. So again, just remember that you can cut your sentiments. It won't hurt anything. You can always put them back together if you want to use them again. And then I'm just using an acrylic block to stamp that little exclamation point. So now that we have our sentiment all done, I'm going to remove the backing from that front panel. I'm removing the backing from the tape, and then I'll go ahead and line these up. And you do want to take a little time there to line those up and attach that. Now I want to add a few embellishments here, so I'm going to my Pink Fresh Studio Essentials Jewel Mix, and I'm grabbing that really pretty creamy color. And these come in 3 different sizes. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of glue there and attach some of these to my card, just for a little bit of sparkle. Now I'm using this next set here. This is the Tree Before and After set from Fawn, and that says Thankful for You. So I had already cut that sentiment. I cut off the thankful for a different card previously. And now I have the words for you together, and I'm going to cut those in half. So again, we're just cutting the sentiment down to use it the way that we want to. We can always put it back together again. And I'm going to stamp that sentiment right on each of these acorns. Again, going back to that same ink pad, and as these spin around, you'll see this cute little sentiment. So we're going to want to stamp these on the front of our acorns and also on the back of the acorn as well. So I lined those up, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp those. Now you could certainly stamp these acorns before you assemble your card, but I just thought it would be easier to do it this way, but whatever works for you. You just want to make sure that then you do the inside as well. So do each of the acorns or both sides of the acorns. So I'm going to flip those around. And again, I've got this all placed in my Misty stamp positioner. And now they're lined up perfectly, so I can go ahead and do my second stamping. So that just makes it really easy. I don't have to line these up each time. Now I'm just going to add the exclamation point here with a black permanent marker just to make it easier, but you could certainly go back to your acrylic block and do that stamping. And now let me give you a closer look at the finished card. And again, I just love that background of leaves and how cute these little spinners are. And then we've got our sentiment hidden inside. Now again, this is a spinner, so you do want to wind these up before you put these in the envelope for the recipient. So you'll just take a little time to wind those up. I usually wind them up maybe 6, 7, 8 times. And then when they open the card, you can see how cute it is when those spin around. And I love that when the cards open, it's just as pretty because you can see all of those little acorns. So let me wind it up again. I did this so many times. I just had such a kick out of this. So when you open it up, again, you have that little spinner mechanism. And then you can see there I used one of those circles on the flap of the envelope. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.